My name is Claire Dawson. I'm 34. And on my wedding day, I stood at the cake table and counted 4 empty chairs. One had my father's name on it. One had my mother's. One belonged to my sister, Nora. The last was for Rebecca, my best friend since 10th grade. All 4 of them were 40 minutes away at Nora's engagement party, the one my mother had scheduled for the exact same afternoon. I lifted the knife. Mark's hand settled warm over mine, and my phone buzzed against the table. My mother's name lit up the screen. "We need to talk. Now." Then the calls started. By the time the cake was cut, I'd counted 36 missed calls. I didn't answer a single one. What none of them knew was that something was already waiting for them. Signed 3 years earlier, sitting quietly in a county filing cabinet, about to change everything. I'm a hospice nurse. I sit with people in the last rooms of their lives, and I've learned that families show you the truth at the edges. In my own family, I was the edge nobody ever looked at. I was the one you called when the water heater died at midnight, when my father's prescriptions got tangled at the pharmacy, when a property tax notice came and nobody wanted to open it. Nora was the one you called to celebrate. That was just the weather in our house. I'd stopped expecting it to change. I didn't complain. My weakness was never that I was weak. It was that I carried things quietly and called it strength. So when I planned my wedding, I kept the guest list small. Mark asked once why I wasn't inviting more of my own side. I told him the truth I only half believed. If they want to come, they'll come. I drove the invitation out to the farm myself instead of trusting the mail. I told myself that was love. Looking back, it was a test, and some part of me already knew the answer. The farm sat 20 minutes outside town, down a gravel road my grandfather had cut by hand. When I pulled in that afternoon, my mother, Margaret, was on the porch with a binder. She didn't look up right away. "Claire," she said, like she'd forgotten I was coming. I held out the invitation. She set it on top of the binder and kept talking about Nora. "You won't believe it. Andrew's family wants to do something proper. Real family celebration." My father, Richard, sat in the corner with a blanket over his knees. The stroke 3 years earlier had taken the strength on his right side. And something else besides, some willingness to meet my eyes. "Hi, Dad," I said. He nodded at the railing. I asked my mother if she had the wedding date right. She waved her hand. Of course. But she never wrote it in the binder. She wrote everything in that binder. I watched her not write it, and felt something cold settle in my chest. The old familiar sense that I would never be the headline in this house. To understand the empty chairs, you have to go back 3 years to the worst spring of my life. My father had his stroke in March. While he was still in the hospital, a letter came from the bank. The farm note was 90 days past due. Foreclosure was printed in bold, like it was proud of itself. My parents had been quietly drowning for 2 years and told no one, least of all me. $84,000 to bring it current, plus legal fees stacking on top. I was 31. I had $84,000 in a savings account I'd built one double shift at a time. It was supposed to be my someday house. I sat in the hospital parking garage and made a decision in about 4 minutes. I would save the farm. My grandfather built it. My father was lying upstairs, unable to lift his right hand. I couldn't watch them lose the one thing that had outlived everything else. But I didn't just hand over the money. Remember that, because it matters. Even then, some careful part of me knew that in my family, a gift would be remembered the way water remembers a stone. It wouldn't. So I did it the right way on paper with a lawyer, and I told no one. 3 years later, in a crowded farmhouse living room, everyone who skipped my wedding would find out exactly what I'd signed. Nora's engagement came down like a holiday nobody had voted on. My mother called me at the hospital, which she never did. "Nora's engaged," she said, smiling through the phone. "Andrew proposed at the lake. We're thinking of a little celebration." "Congratulations," I said, and meant it. Then my mother added the line I would carry into every room for the next 2 months. "You'll understand, Claire. A wedding's just a party. Family is about who you really show up for." I stood in the supply closet with the smell of antiseptic and said nothing for a moment. She wanted me to hear the ranking. I'd heard it my whole life, but never that clean. Rebecca and I had been friends for 19 years. She was supposed to be my maid of honor. When I called about the final dress fitting, there was a pause on the line I recognized immediately, the kind with the door behind it. I might have a conflict that weekend, she said. Took me longer than it should have to understand. My mother had called my best friend and pulled her toward Nora's afternoon, the same way she'd pulled everyone else. It's the same day as my wedding, Rebecca. Silence. I didn't realize, she said, and we both heard how thin it sounded. I found out about the actual date from my cousin Marie of all people. A screenshot, no words. A cream invitation. Please join us to celebrate the engagement of Nora and Andrew. The date was my wedding date. The time was an hour before my ceremony. I called my mother and kept my voice flat. Mom, Nora's party is the same day as my wedding. Is it? She said. We just couldn't make the calendars work. Andrew's family is only in town that weekend. There are 51 other weekends in the year. She sighed, long-suffering, like I'd asked something unreasonable. We can't split the family 2 ways in one weekend, Claire. People have to choose. It isn't fair to make them. As if I were the one who'd built the fork in the road. Okay, Mom, I said. I hope it's a beautiful party. That night, Mark found me at the kitchen table, moving names around the seating chart like I could conjure people out of cardstock. Do you want to move the date? He asked. I thought about it. I could fold myself smaller the way I always had. Instead, I felt something unexpected. Relief. No, I said. If they want to come, they'll come. If they don't, that's their answer, and I'd rather hear it clearly. We pulled the 4 chairs from the chart. Then we put them back on purpose. Leave them, I said. Let the chairs say it. 3 nights before the wedding, I couldn't sleep. I found myself on the floor of the spare room with a banker's box in my lap. The one that had moved apartments with me 3 times, never opened. I knew more or less what was inside. Paperwork from the worst spring of my life. Opening it meant going back to the parking garage. On top was a manila envelope, soft at the corners, labeled in my own handwriting. Farm important. I almost didn't open it. But my hands moved anyway, and there it was, a promissory note, a recorded lien, and beneath them, in a smaller envelope I'd forgotten entirely, a letter in my grandfather's slanted hand, written the year before he died. I read the first line and stopped breathing for a second. I didn't read the rest. Not yet. I put everything back, held it against my chest in the dark, and understood that whatever happened at my wedding, the real story was sitting in my lap. I just didn't know yet that everyone who skipped it was about to learn that the same way. Saturday came cold and cool, the kind of autumn day you'd order if they let you. We married in a restored barn at a vineyard 15 minutes from town. String lights, hay bales, a borrowed quilt over the rail. The empty chairs hurt. During the vows, I looked out once and saw the 4 names on little cards, fronting 4 folding chairs nobody sat in. My throat closed for a moment. Then Mark said my name and I came back. My friends from the hospital filled 2 whole rows. The aunt I actually liked drove 3 hours. The room was full of people who chose me. That's the thing about empty chairs. They make the full ones impossible to ignore. At the cake table, my phone buzzed against my hip. My mother's name. A text, we need to talk now. Then the calls stacked behind it, one after another. Nora. My father's landline. My mother again. I turned the ringer off, cut the cake, and kissed my husband. By the time we came up for air, the screen said 36 missed calls. I put the phone face down. Whatever it was, it had waited this long. It could wait until the dancing was done. I listened to the voicemails near midnight, still in half my wedding makeup. Mark beside me on the edge of the bed. My mother's voice, bright and brittle at first, then thinner with every message, until it had the sound I'd only ever heard in hospital hallways, the sound of someone watching a plan come apart in their hands. Nora's voice, furious and wet. I don't know what you did, but you ruined everything. Not one of them asked how my wedding was. Not one of them said congratulations. They'd skipped the whole thing, and the only proof it had happened at all was an accusation that I'd sabotaged their party from 15 minutes away, doing nothing but existing as a creditor 3 years earlier. I pieced together what happened from Marie's texts, and later from my father. Picture it. Nora's engagement party, the farmhouse backyard strung with rented lights, 60 guests in their good clothes. Around 4 o'clock, my mother stood on the porch step and gave a speech about family and legacy. Then she and my father announced their gift to the happy couple. The farmhouse. The land. My grandfather's land. Free and clear to start their lives. The guests applauded. Andrew's mother teared up. And then Andrew's father, a careful man I'm told who reads things before he signs them, asked just to be sure whether the property was free and clear. My mother, beaming, said of course it was. Except it wasn't. Not even close. There was a lien on that property, recorded at the county courthouse 3 years earlier. And the name on it wasn't the bank's. It was mine. The daughter who wasn't at the party. Sunday morning, before I called anyone back, I opened the envelope all the way at my own kitchen table. 3 documents. A promissory note. I, Claire Dawson, had loaned my parents $84,000 to cure the default, plus $11,000 more in fees. Signed by both of them, the day my father was still in rehab and my mother was too frantic to read what she was signing. A recorded lien securing that loan, meaning the farm couldn't be sold, gifted, or transferred without the debt settled first. And my grandfather's letter, which I finally read in full. Near the end, one line I read twice. Land doesn't go to the one who's loved most. It stays with the one who keeps it alive. The paper didn't care who my mother loved louder. It only cared whose name was on the lien. I want to explain why I did it the careful way, because otherwise you'll think I'm someone who plans things 3 years in advance out of spite. I'm not. 3 years ago, while my father was still in rehab, I overheard my mother on the phone with her sister, not knowing I was in the next room. She was talking about refinancing the farm once things settled. Pulling money out because Nora would need help someday, a wedding, a house. She can't do it on her own like Claire can. I was about to spend every dollar I had to save that farm, and my mother was already planning how to leverage it for the daughter she actually worried about. So I called a lawyer, not to trap anyone, but to protect the one thing I'd just given everything for. I felt like a bad daughter for it. Calculating. Cold. Turns out I hadn't accused them of anything they didn't eventually do, in front of 60 people on my wedding day. By Sunday afternoon, the pleading had turned to blame. My mother on the phone, her voice sharp. Do you have any idea what you've done to this family? I noticed something almost funny. Not one of them had asked how my wedding was. The story had already rewritten itself in their heads. I was the villain. I made one stop before answering anyone. A small brick building downtown, where a loan officer named George Foster had handled that lien for 15 years. I needed to be sure the ground under me was solid before I stood on it. It's all in order, he said, sliding the file toward me. I got 2 calls this weekend. Your mother, and a gentleman I gather was your sister's future father-in-law, asking about the encumbrance. He told them the truth. The lien was real, recorded, public. Not without your signature releasing it, he said, when I asked if they could undo it without me. My mother tried guilt next, softer this time. I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding, she said. The kindest thing, the thing that would show everyone you're not bitter, would be to just sign the release. After everything we did for you. I'm not bitter about the party, I told her. But I'm not signing away $95,000 so you can give Nora a house I paid to keep. I ended the call gently. Nora showed up at my apartment that week, something she'd never done before. She didn't know which buzzer was mine. Underneath her fury was something I hadn't expected. Fear. Andrew's parents think we lied to them, she said. Why do you even have a lien on the farm? I told her plainly. The bank, the foreclosure, my savings, all of it. You never said anything, she said, quieter now. No, I agreed. I didn't. For the first time in years, my sister looked at me like a person instead of an appliance. My father called Thursday on the landline, his speech still slow on the left side since the stroke. I knew about the lien, he said. I signed it. I remembered. Your mother forgot or made herself forget, but I didn't. I let her stand up at that party and give away your house. I knew, and I let her. Because it was easier than telling her the truth in front of everyone. Why, Dad? Every time I look at you, I see the girl who saved us, and I'm ashamed I needed saving. Then quieter. Sign the release. Let me have peace before I go. I'd give you anything, I said. But not that. Not so it can be handed to Nora. If you want peace, we make this fair in the open. The summons came Friday. A family meeting Sunday at the farmhouse, aunts and uncles invited, and Andrew's parents too. So they can see we're a normal, loving family. I understood the move. She wanted an audience, wanted me framed as the bitter daughter until the discomfort made me sign just to make it stop. It had worked on me my whole life. This time I brought my own paperwork to the performance. The farmhouse living room was arranged like a tribunal nobody would call by that name. My mother sat center of the couch, my father beside her, smaller than I remembered. Nora perched on the arm. Andrew stood by the window, arms crossed. His parents sat in the two good chairs. The grandfather clock ticked into the silence. My mother began before I'd even sat down. I'll be honest because I think honesty is best. My daughter is holding a legal claim over our family home. Secretly, and refusing to release it so her sister can have a wedding gift. I don't know where the daughter I raised went. The room turned toward me, faces arranging into disappointment, exactly as she designed. I felt the old pull to fold, to be smaller, to make them stop looking. Then I felt the envelope in my hand, and remembered I wasn't a child in this house anymore. I was the woman who'd kept it standing. You're right, Mom, I said. Honesty is best. I walked to the coffee table and laid the papers down unhurried. 3 years ago, this farm was 90 days from foreclosure. I was 31 with $84,000 in savings. I gave it all plus $11,000 I borrowed to save this house. Not as a loan I shouted about, as a quiet thing on paper, so it could never be given away without the debt being honored. I set the note down, their signatures plain at the bottom. You may have forgotten. The county didn't. My mother went white. Claire. I'm not taking the house, I said, my voice staying level. I never wanted the house. I'm just the reason there's still a house to give. I looked at Andrew's father. You asked about the lien. It's real. It's public record. I hid it from no one. My own family simply chose not to remember it. My mother came off the couch, her softness gone. How dare you humiliate us in our own home, after everything we sacrificed? I'm not punishing anyone, I said quietly. I'm just done pretending the paper doesn't say what it says. Andrew's father stood and asked Andrew to step outside with him. Nobody spoke. Then my cousin Marie, of all people, said softly into the silence, She's the one who really showed up. My mother's own words turned all the way around, pointed home. After everything we did for you, she said again, weaker now. After everything I did for this family, I said. Yes, I'd protect it from being given away in a speech I wasn't invited to hear. My father reached over and took my mother's hand, not to comfort her, but to stop her. For once she let herself be stopped. Before I left, I set down something better than a victory. I'm not releasing the lien for free, I told the room. But I don't want to take the house either. I want an independent appraisal. Everything on the table, what it's worth, what I'm owed, what's fair. If Nora and Andrew want a future here, there's an honest way to build it, with everyone's name on the paper this time. In the open. My mother didn't thank me. I didn't expect her to. But my father met my eyes and nodded, slow and certain, and that nod cost him more than anything he'd said on the phone. In the weeks after, Nora and Andrew postponed their wedding. His parents wanted to understand the family they were marrying into, and I didn't blame them. Nora was furious with me for a while. Then one day she called just to talk and asked if I'd really worked doubles for years to build that savings. I said yes. I'm sorry I never knew you, she said. Not sorry for the wedding. Something bigger than that. The farm was appraised fairly. My parents refinanced properly, agreed to repay what they owed with interest, and put the future of the land in writing, every name visible. My mother has never really apologized. And I've made peace with the idea that she may not understand what she did. But she's stopped calling only when something is broken. That's not nothing. My father comes by most weeks now. He sits at our table while Mark makes coffee and tells the same old stories about my grandfather, and I let him because I understand now that his coldness was never about loving me less. It was about not forgiving himself for needing me. I kept the photograph of the 4 empty chairs. I don't find it sad anymore. I find it clarifying. Those chairs told me a truth my family had spent 30 years talking around. Being the one who holds everything together doesn't mean you owe everyone your silence. And it never meant you owed them the right to forget what you carried. If your family only calls when they need something, you're allowed to stop answering. And you're allowed to let the truth speak louder than the apology you may never get.